skills assessment. And I know we even had Drew at one stage trying to help us out there. Drew, remember that chat we had in Rivonia?
Correct, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So we'd love to share some of what we've learned and the challenges we've been on. I think I must have done about 8 or 9 assessments at the moment. That's including Paul. I think Veronica's done 15 assessments. And we're still trying to find our way through this. And it's all about making sure that we can build this community of practice, that the people can grow, and we can share the knowledge, and hopefully we can have an improvement on our health. I'm still waiting for that one, but so that's what the talk today is. And when I've gone through the other sections with the other people in terms of managers, we've introduced all these different levels. And basically what I've said here from a data management point of view, we start off with DMBOK, and that's because we're part of the DMBOK South Africa. So right at the top is DMBOK. And if you think of what happens at DMBOK, they're the ones who publish the DMBOK. They're the ones that almost describe what needs to be done. But we know that there's a big gap from the DMBOK to the actual practice that we do on site and with a customer, and that's bringing it down to the how. Okay? So if we think of we're going to build this community of practice, and they are going to focus on helping our people do the job that they need to do, then we need to get, as we drill down, we need to get more and more detail about how do we do work? How do we do things? Okay, so we go from DMBOK, then I don't know if you guys are aware of DMBOK EMEA. That's DMBOK South Africa is part of DMBOK EMEA. So we have meetings once a month with the European counterparts. And then we come to DMBOK South Africa. Now, before the lockdown, we actually had DMBOK South Africa, Johannesburg and Cape Town. Now that's all been thrown away, and we've got Durban, PE, Bloemfontein, wherever it comes, and we've even got international people that follow us as well. So that provincial data management community has dropped out, but I do think we'll get back to a stage where we'll have almost these coffee engagement sessions where one can talk about the practice of data management. So our focus for today's talk is in this area over here, right? So it's within the organization. So how do we operate? How do we set up data management within the organization? And that's sort of what Marvin was alluding to just now in terms of he's joined a new company. They now have to introduce all these data management concepts, and it's trying to get a level of socialization. Okay. So this was a really nice presentation from David Marco, and he spoke about a socialization plan, and what we recognized there was that he was missing this community of practice. So I'd be quite interested. I think I asked the other guys, I know Paul had a discussion there in terms of how many of you have community of practices within your organization? And I'm assuming that the more you've taken on Agile, the more you're taking on these communities of practice. So are there any people on the talk today that have set up communities of practice or are part of a community of practice within their organization? I'm hoping that most of you are part of members of DAMA, be it South Africa or wherever it is. But how many of you, MTN, I know there's a few MTN guys, do you have community of practices going? Any hands up for those?
Yeah, I think, Howard, it goes back to the question I asked, and it relates to the post that we posted on LinkedIn today, that not all these groups are actually communities of practice.
Yes.
Because we do have groups that talks around data management, but they are not really a community of practice if you look at it.
Right. So you are right. So, for example, a data governance council is not a community of practice. All right. They're there to make sure that the jobs are being done that people are following up on the actions and they're looking at issues that are coming about. So the community of practice is more related to data management socialization than it is related to the data management org structure. It's part of it, but it's more the socialization, and it's more sort of in Christine's area around the culture change and the change management. And when we had the very first talk, Mzu, one of the things we pointed out to the managers was, when you set up in a very agile environment, you're creating the teams. And so what you are doing is, for example, you may have a data quality professional specialist on a team, and they are no longer sitting with 8 other data quality people. So what happens is they tend to become isolated, and we now need to find ways of breaking down those really important structures that Agile creates to get delivery. And we now need to find a way of them talking to other data quality professionals to overcome some of the challenges they have with their business and with the work that they're doing. Okay. Mzu, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's slowly becoming clear.
Okay. Christine, you wanted to mention something?
Yes, thanks, Howard. Just to add to what you say, Agile does propose a community of practice as a standard that needs to be added. And what I've done is I'm quite committed to doing that within my data culture change, because that drives the whole sustainability of that discipline. In our case, it's data management. So yeah, so I've just posted that picture just to support exactly what you're saying from an Agile.
All right. Great. So as we get more and more agile, so the community of practice becomes more and more important. And for me, that makes sense. And that's what we're seeing in the organizations. So if we go forward, we will be sharing this deck, and it talks about the key benefits of a community of practice. What are the isolation challenges that we've just spoken about? What are the maturity phases of a community of practice? How does something like Dama South Africa get involved and play? And then I've got issues for data citizens in terms of how do they get involved. But today I want to focus on the data management professionals. Okay, so I'm sure you've seen this diagram all over the place in terms of the 3 important areas of a community of practice that really define and control this community of practice. So the first area we talk about is the domain. And one of the important issues, and I keep feeling that I need to refer back to some of the other talks, but quite often they say, depending on the maturity, a community of practice within an organization will start spontaneously, okay, with reading groups or people coming together, talking, lunch sessions, sharing and stuff like that. They won't be formalized as part of the structure. Now, as you get more and more controlled and more definitive of it, the community of practice can actually be as far as dealing with HR issues, interviewing new data modelers, defining the standards, defining the policies that data modelers have to adhere to. So because they are the specialists and the people that have the most interest within a domain, they are the best people to start contributing to those practices. And so we see the shared domain, we then see the practice that we're talking about, shared activities, shared resources, tools, techniques, ideas. That's where the practice area comes in. And then we've got the members, which is the joint members that are the people that are working together, and we're assisting people, especially entry-level people that have just come in and they need the guidance. Now, Agile can be quite hard on that, where you put the entry person into a team thinking that they can run with it, and then they sort of develop that sink or swim or fake it until you make it type of scenario, and we overload those guys. It's nice if they're not automatically thrown in there, but a lot of times due to the resource shortage, the guys come in there and they have to start running pretty quickly. And there are challenges to that. Okay, so those are the three important circles that we have within the community of practice. Now, what I wanted to do is just give you some examples of these different areas. So, and I know I've been involved with Standard Bank, where they've got what they call tribes. We refer to them as community of practice. And there's a tribe almost per knowledge area of the DMBOK, the domains, right? So I've just put some icons here. For example, BI, quality, data architecture, data governance, document and content. And then we've got development, operations, all the different areas that we have within the DMBOK. So that's the sort of domain. So within this domain, we could have a data management domain, but then we're going to have sub areas. And we're finding that, I remember having this chat with Drew almost 2 years ago now, where we said the problem that we're having sometimes with the DAMA community is all we do is talk about data governance. And that, I'm not sure why that comes about, but that tends to be the more dominant domain that we had. Now, that was the reason for breaking up, not breaking up, but creating the ins and outs of data modeling. That's when we led to the big data, the data protection, and governance and ethics. So we're trying to get people to run those individual communities. And we're trying to grow that, and that's something that you'll find within your organizations as well. Okay, so what are we trying to do with all of this stuff? Is we're trying to get all these different ways of thinking within the organization and doing things and different practices. So we're trying to get the members to operate in a more streamlined fashion and in a more controlled way. Okay, so we got to get more and more consistency. And in one of the other talks that we have in the slide deck is, if you think that it's just about instituting policies and standards and procedures, that doesn't always work. So you can have all these fancy policies, procedures, and standards, but no one follows them because the culture isn't right. And we haven't focused on the people side of it. What is their contribution to the best way of doing stuff? So that's what that's the role that the community of practice is starting to bring into the organization. Now, this is some of the work that we've been doing in terms of the data management archetypes. We'll get this, we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail. The next level is the practices, the actual activities, and we dealt with that in more detail in another area. So we won't focus too much on that. What we're trying to do is focus on the people and how do they fit into these different areas. That's the key talk today. All right, and then what Veronica and Christine have been developing is a way of doing a level of assessment. Now, we'll talk about the 3 different assessments that we're putting together that will help us position people both in terms of thought leaders, specialists, different domains, different practices, where is the right place for you to operate. Okay, and we'd certainly like some feedback today and some discussion around that area. Okay, so we've actually got a lot of research work done by organizational constructs or people that focus on organizational structures. And the Wenger is one of the guys that's done the most work in this area. We get these open communities like Red Hat, and so the guys have learned a lot from those different areas. The open source arena is very strong in this area, and he's categorized the characteristics of a community of practice and the activities as the following. So we should be involved with problem solving. That's what the community of practice should add. Making recommendations. So there are better ways of doing stuff. So how do we uplift our maturity if we haven't got a bunch of people that are constantly focusing on this and saying we can get better? this is where we're seeing the weaknesses. This is what we need to look at. If it's just the data governance people, then it's perceived by the community or all the data management people as more of a control option and not as an enablement option. And that's certainly the area that Christine has been working in, is how do we get away from the control and how do we get more involved in enabling people to get the job done? Okay, so these are quite important characteristics, and what I did was I actually mapped these characteristics onto these different circles of the community of practice. Okay, and what I did was I actually tried to give some examples of where these characteristics come about. Okay, now I don't know how many of you guys are aware of some of the work that David McComb has been doing in the semantic area. Anybody read that? Has anyone gone through? He had an article that he wrote, and I know I spoke about it, where he's saying they must rewrite the entire DMBOK, and they must now refer to it or deal with a new way of talking about it with semantics. Has anyone been exposed to that? Now, that semantics is all about taxonomies, ontologies, understanding meaning, and stuff like that. So he's saying with this new way of thinking, a lot of the roles are going to disappear. And I don't know if you've seen, for example, the one guy that presented on FIBO or FibDM, he now refers to himself as a data architect and a data ontologist. Anybody? Am I the only one anyone can comment on that? Not many comments today. Okay, so that's a new trend that's happening. The world of semantics, knowledge graphs, all these new elements are driving things in a very different way. And this is where the thought leaders are coming together and they're saying, we need to do things, we need to tackle things in a different way. And of course, this semantic and the semantic area focuses a lot on AI and machine learning. So we're going to see more and more of that. Now, when you have these developments like semantics, you tend to get new recommendations. And that's something we've had and we've spoken about quite a bit, is what's referred to as a data-centric architecture. And just in the last 2 weeks, I've had several people come to me and talk to me about microservices. Anyone heard that thing of microservices? Someone called Martin Fowler. He's pushing that a lot. Bill Inman is certainly the taxonomy. Yes, David, in terms of taxonomy and ontologies, understanding semantics. And so Bill Inman, what he does, and I did the course with him, I was certified on his training, and what that does is to say, when people talk to us over the phone and when they write to us, how do we understand what they're saying about us? So his comment is, if you want to listen to the customer, then you better understand semantics. The old days of just looking at the analytics of how many calls have been done, you're not listening to your customer. So then we've got another area here which is called shared experiences. Now this is what's happening to the South African community in terms of Papaya. I don't know if you've seen or you've attended some of the sessions that we've held with data protection, data privacy, and it's now within almost at a DAMA level where we're trying to share these experiences of the different domains, and we're trying to get good practice to come out of that. Now we're very fortunate in this one, as GDPR has gone ahead of us, so we can be taking a lot of that. And examples of a good practice is ROPA, which is the Registry of Processing Activities. So that's a really nice bit of work and documentation that GDPR installed and got going, and we can apply it within Papaya to get some of our stuff done. Okay. Now, the area of problem solving is dealing with things like data wrangling and data munging. So why is it that data scientists are spending 80% of their time in areas that are not about insights. They are trying to get the data into the right format. Who's to blame? How do we get this thing sorted out? So this type of activity and characteristics sits in between all of these areas. What's important about big data and data science? What sort of practices can we put in place? And how can the members contribute to that? Okay. Then we have a shared measurement tool. So a good example of that is the data modeling scorecard. Any of you guys that have been on the training course and read Steve Hoberman, he's got a fantastic area on how do we measure data modeling. And we need to be applying that to data quality and all the other areas that we get involved with. All right. Then we have knowledge management, okay? And I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about Mike 2. I will quickly just show you guys Mike 2. And I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the fact that Mike 2 is actually owned by Dama. So Dama owns Mike 2. Any hands up of people that have looked at this? I know Paul has. Christine, have you had any questions from your side?
No, I just found it a very comprehensive repository, especially for somebody that's not an expert in the data field.
Yeah.
It's a nice go-to point.
Yeah, and I mean, if we could have this, I always say to people when they want to set up a community of practice within the organization, here is a really good example of what you can do for your company. So they got the home, they got a profile of different things, and I'll just take you through it. So here you can see solution capabilities, featured articles, what's in the open methodology framework, solution offerings. They've got wikis in terms of talking about the different practices. They've got discussions and blogs, and then the community. And there's all different task lists of things that can be done. And so a really nice example that you can use to establish a community of practice within your organization. Okay, but that's so if you want to learn more about it, I can certainly share some with you. We are looking from a Dama point of view to get this back up and running. And what we're trying to do there is to get that to be more of the how-to, not so much the why that's dealt and the what that's dealt with by the DMBOK. So we don't want to recreate the DMBOK. But another interesting thing there is something called the digital twin. If you guys are interested to look at that, that's also trying to look at practices. Okay, then we have community forums. That's mainly in the membership area. And that's where examples of that are internal tribes, internal community of practice, and then Dama South Africa that we operate at this level. Now, I used this confidence and encouraging. I think that's a critical part of the membership area. And I've just seen two people, and I know I didn't pass this certainly with them. Zoo is on here, and just in terms of helping them establish confidence, being able to present on a stage and things like that, just helping people get more and more confidence in the domain that they've chosen. I think this is one of our important things that we're trying to achieve is to give people the confidence to speak out, to build the relationships and to network. And these are two people that really stand out for me in terms of the Dama South Africa community. That's Esty. She works in Altron. She's fantastic at just grabbing stuff and working with it. And Mzu as well. I've really been impressed with some of the work he's done on the study groups. Still waiting for him to write his exam, but I know he's going to get there soon. Not so, Mzu.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get there soon, Howard. And thanks for the mention and the constant reminder. Thanks.
Sorry about that. So Christine, so there's Paul's answer on what does Mike 2 stand for. Then we've got community data. Now, this is an area that we're working from, and we would really appreciate your help, is trying to get enough data to help us understand our members. And we'll talk about that a little bit further on. Now, within this area, we're dealing with what we call knowledge, skills, and competencies. This is almost your CV. So for all those people on here who are interested in building a CV around data management, that's what we're wanting to do, and putting together systems to do that. And then there's also a thinking style that we'll talk to you about now. Now, the last one is policy management. And I must admit, I haven't done this policy management. So this was a challenge for me to put the policy together for these different community forums so that they can progress and have a way of operating. So almost like a terms of reference, and that they are helping people. All right, so the next one, this was for Veronica. I just want to check. I hope I haven't missed the slide, but Veronica's leading. Yeah, that it is right. So Veronica's leading our challenge, or just our way of building these data management archetypes. So Veronica, would you like to share with some of the work you've done?
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. See, this slide is part of how we want to develop our pathway so that we can mentor a person to reach his or her target state, or basically the pinnacle of his or her career. Anyone who's done my course has seen my my mountain pictures and heard about the pathway that we have. When we've done an analogy of your data management career. We've compared it to climbing a mountain, in fact, climbing Mount Everest. Let's just go for the biggest one. So we would be asking a person who wants to climb with us what they see from the top of the mountain. I've got the first slide in my CDMP Q&A. It's got a guy that's grinning and they're standing on the top of Mount Everest. So what do you see at the top of your mountain? Do you want to be a CDO or some kind of an executive? Do you want to be a thought leader, that kind of rock star that stands on the world stage and puts forward your new ideas within your knowledge area? That's why it's got XXX there, meaning knowledge area. So you could be a data modeling thought leader like Steve Hoberman, for example. Or you could be a really focused technician and you'd like to be a specialist in your knowledge area. Or maybe you'd like to be a manager of data management people, such as that XXX manager there. That would be a manager of a team as well as the EIM manager. So we'll be lumping those guys together. So when we get a person who says, I want to be the CDO, we'd like to make sure that in fact that person is a right fit for CDO. We're not questioning anybody's cognitive abilities or behavioral stuff. We're not industrial psychologists, so we actually can't do that. If we need to, then we have people that we can refer someone to, and if your company needs the cognitive assessment done, well, fine. So we're assuming that when people come to us on the pathway, that that's not a problem. It's just whether they're the right fit for where they're going. We don't want to overstress someone who's the wrong in that area and isn't actually doing the work or meeting the expectations or doing the case studies. That Howard can be quite a taskmaster if you're under him for mentoring. He'll give you work to do and he'll expect you to do it. And part of that is a whole bunch of people that need to still write exams. So that's part of our pathway. Anyway, that's just explaining this, that if you say, I want to be a data modeling rock star, then we know you're heading for this thought leader type of pinnacle of your career. Have I explained that right? So these pathways here is how it will design a pathway that's suitable for the person's end game if we work out that person is a right fit for the end game.
So we wanted to actually have a discussion here, and I'll give you some examples. I won't mention his name, but I had someone call me up and said, can they have half an hour with me just to talk about their career? And I said, no, that's fine. We'd love to help you. And he wanted to become a BI specialist. And the more and more I spoke to him, the more I realized that he's not going to be happy with just sticking in one place, doing the one job all the time. He would he's almost a better route for him would be, or target would be, a CDO or a CDAO. He's the one who wants to change the business. Okay, now it's the type of thing where you almost have to have like a half an hour to an hour, maybe 2 hour chats over coffee, just to understand that people are positioning themselves in the right direction. And then I've had other people that they say they want to be a manager, and you say, why? And then some of the answers, well, yes, because they've got all the control. They tell everybody what to do. Now, you'll probably find that some of them are not really going to be good at being managers, and they'd probably be better at a specialist or at a thought leader. And then we have another person that says there is no ways that they want to stand up on stage. They don't want to go to an international conference and present a paper. They just want to be the best at being the best data modeler. Okay. So I was quite interested in getting your feedback in terms of saying, is this something that you see is workable for yourself, for example? Do you guys have something, have you been plotting this journey out for yourself, and how do you get there? Would anyone like to contribute or to share their experiences? Mzu, can I pick on you?
Yes, Howard, I think from my side, it's not necessarily putting it on paper in terms of which direction
Right.
you want to go, but it's based on understanding those Dharma specialty areas. And then you understand, okay, technically, if I want to go maybe on let's say maybe you want to go architecture, you want to go DQ and so forth. It's based on interest on those areas from my side,
Yeah.
and understanding what's behind that.
Yeah, but I suppose the question I was keen on is, are you interested in going more the managerial route or more the specialist route? What would your initial preference? So once you've done your CDMP, would you look more to becoming a manager or to becoming a specialist? Where do you naturally feel you can go?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both, because from my side, going on managerial side of things, it's mostly understanding the principles and communicating them, and understanding what needs to be done. But there's also that element of how or how things must be done, and then you start to put, because if you look at, especially in the South African landscape, most companies do have these on paper, but when it comes to the implementation, we found ourselves like, so that's why for me, I'm interested in both.
Yeah, but what would be your target state? If I was to ask you, where would you like to finish up? Where would you like to finish up?
Definitely the CDO, CDAO.
Okay. Okay, great. That's important. And then one would want to ask you the questions as to why. Why the CDO? Why not a thought leader? Why not a specialist? But that's the type of discussion that we wanting to have with you and explain. Sort of and we'll go into the next discussion just to show you some examples of what we're talking about. I see Paul has his hand up. Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Howard. You made me think it's a good conversation, because I wonder how many people, depending on where they are and not really about age, but sort of where they came from in their career and sort of where they're going, how many are crystal clear in terms of where they do want to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I myself have thought about and pursued quite a few directions, but you kind of go down that route and you drive around in the neighborhood and you sort of reverse back and you realize something. And but each one of those driving around in the neighborhoods are quite valuable in itself.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, maybe it's not like that for everybody, but I think for me it's quite organic in terms of sort of what you learn, how you then apply it. Something grabs your interest, it makes you passionate about something, and I don't think there's mutual exclusivity, especially from the technical and the managerial side. The problem with if you just go managerial is you'll just sound like somebody who goes to conferences a lot and read, and you actually won't understand what you're saying or wanting to promote. While if you do have a bit of dirty hands, as we say, not in terms of corruption, just playing your cards and having real experience in some area of data management, whatever that is, whether it's BI or DQ or MDM or whatnot. Those things give you scars on your back that you sort of need to become a good manager again. So it's I like the mountain climbing analogy as well, because it's going to be it's a process to get there, and on the way you're going to learn things that might sway you this way or that.
Yes, it's trying to get people to think far into the future. And also, I mean, we want to, you can drive around the neighborhood, but gee, we don't want to walk around that mountain like the Israelites walked around Mount Sinai over and over and over. So it's to try and gauge where a person wants to be in 10 years' time. I mean, who knows where we're going to be in 10 years' time, but you need to sort of think about this so that you could strategically plot your way. And you see there's a way from between the specialist and the executives and all, there's a way, but it's just trying to gauge where the person wants to be. And then we've got these different assessments, and we look at whether we're assuming cognitively a person is definitely capable of that. We're assuming, and we're just having a part of our experiment, which is probably going to be the next slide, is about thinking styles. We want to assess where a person is with thinking styles. We've got some hypotheses to prove, to see which ways maybe a dominant thinking style is more suited for. Then we've got a strengths type of assessment, which Christine is busy with, and to see which strengths work with which strengths in our community as well, to find complementary people within the community. And then lastly, we're going to be generating some questions which are more targeted towards that pinnacle state that a person says they want to be, so that we can interview them and work out whether, yes, that is where they should be going, or maybe they should be going here and then there, and then finally land up there. So those are kind of pointed questions that are going to lead towards which knowledge areas they're going to be most comfortable in, or which knowledge areas are going to stimulate them, and down to that knowledge area level, as well as whether they're going to be technical or managerial.
Okay, so we missed out the one slide, so I just wanted to take you guys through this in terms of what we've done. Is we've sort of created these archetypes, CDO, EIM manager, and we've sort of said that this is the work or the phase that we have within the DMBOK activities. So if you go through the DMBOK, you'll see everything's broken up into these activity phases: planning, development, control, and operations. And we're sort of saying that when you put this community of practice, these are the sort of roles that would have responsibility for those different phases, right? So, and we'll get to Veronica's one again, but I just wanted to lay the foundation here, is to say that when we look at the different work that needs to be done within an organization, the CDO should be responsible for the data strategy and ensuring that the foundations are right. And we've positioned him in this area. And then we've got the EIM manager. So we've got the manager there, and he should be capable of understanding all the areas very well. And similarly with the knowledge area manager, so if you metadata or master data, and the data owner, they are focusing on the control operation, the control activities. Okay, so if you take the DMBOK and you break them all up, you'll see this pattern developing. And then we have a specialist that's more interested in the development and control activities. And of course, the entry person, we're saying that those are the people that should be dealing with the basic operations. just getting the work done. And as they grow and as they benefit, we'll get them into control, being the oversight. And as they get better and better, we'll then get them into development where they'll start setting standards. And so we start progressing the individual up this path so that they're taking on the right tasks and activities at the right time. So also what's helpful for you guys is when we put your CV together, we want to show the people that when you're applying for the data architecture role, you are comfortable at operations, control, development, and planning within architecture. And what years of experience have you had in these different areas, and what projects have you worked on? So you can see that your CV gets a lot more dependent on what this is all about and what you need to do. So that was just the archetype. Now, then the next step was what Veronica started talking to. Veronica, I'm not sure if you want to talk about anything more on this slide.
No, nothing more on that slide.
Just the only thing that we wanted to ask was that, guys, we put together a form that talks about that helps us collect data on the thinking style. You don't have to put your name in there, but if you would like some feedback, we would love to have your name, and then we can discuss the different areas. And you can see over here, we actually evaluated Christine and her family. There were 3 of them.
And change the slide.
Sorry?
Change to the next slide, then they can see Christine's family.
No. Oh, there. That's the next slide.
Oh, I think I'm frozen then.
Yeah.
Okay. That means I've got to jump out and in again.
Too. No, me too. We're just looking at a...
Sorry.
Okay, there we go. Yes.
Sorry. I'm talking to my PowerPoint slide. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Veronica. Okay.
Can I take over again?
Yeah.
Okay. So the level 1 assessment is Gregoric's thinking styles. Because we were very interested in that. If anyone hasn't heard about Gregoric's thinking styles, it's based on how a person perceives, how we perceive information, and how we process and order information. So perception is you're either a concrete, where you use the 5 senses, things are tangible and real world, or you're abstract, which goes beyond the 5 senses. That's the unseen, the feely, touchy subs, concepts, relationships. Then the ordering styles are either sequential or random. That's how we process. Sequential people like to order things, that things must be linear, beginning, end. Your ducks are in a row. Sorry, okay, you can go with that. Your ducks are in a row. And that's me. I'm so ducks in a row. A random people, they are happy with getting their information in random chunks, unconnected chunks, and they're able to fit them together and join and connect the dots. And they're happy with that. They're the multitasking type people. We use these different kinds of thinking styles every day depending on what we're doing, but individuals are dominant in 1 or 2. And that means that those people are most comfortable doing the skills or the roles that those thinking styles are geared for. So that's why we wanted to do some research to see, are all the CDOs we know, whatever, are all the thought leaders we know, whatever, and so on. And we've got this hypothesis, which Howard will talk about a bit later. We've got this hypothesis that a good thought leader will be an abstract sequential thinker predominantly, because that's a good scientist or something like that. Anyway, let me just explain a little bit more. Concrete sequentials, these are people that dislike working in teams with abstract ideas. They're not comfortable with the abstract. They want to be in a structured environment, clear directions. They like repetition. They're very black and white outlook on life. Discussions need to be to the point. Things need to go like clockwork. The abstract sequentials are the kind of people that are able to think abstractly, but then they process and organize the information, which is why they say that the abstract sequentials make good scientists. They like to work alone. They like stimulating environments that allow them to explore details, and they don't actually like people that disagree with them. They don't like diverging views. And the abstract randoms, they thrive on loose connections that bind ideas together, and they could be concrete or abstract, the randoms. The sequentials don't cope well with randoms. The abstract randoms, they like, abstract randoms like teamwork. They like the unseen, like relationships. They like the subtext of conversations. They feel that the health of relationships are the most important outcome. They don't like working in environments where people are dictatorial, people are unfriendly, they hate competition, and they're frustrated when they have to focus on one thing at a time. And exact time, they don't like sharing their feelings, and constructive criticism is perceived as they take it personally. The concrete randoms, they're our risk takers. They're people who are intuitive problem solvers. They like to experiment and learn from the process. And they're big pictures. They naturally see the big picture. They're highly competitive, and they like to work through problems on their own. They don't like to be told what to do. They dislike boundaries, and they're frustrated by formal structures, especially repetition. They don't like to show how they get an answer. They just like to tell the answer. Other things, processes they find to be tedious. They're very frustrated by repetition. So these are the thinking styles. This slide that Howard's showing you has got this more in as learning, with regards to learning rather than working. But we feel that when you're working, you're actually learning. You're continuously learning. So even though these are referring more to learners, they fit in well with working styles as well. So in our team, in our practice team, we actually want to get a smattering of all these people to get everybody to work together. So we would like, we've got some ideas about who would make good what's, but we would like you to help us if you'd like to go back to that where that barcode is and take our survey. We've got it all going straight into Power BI, and we can give you a little report. You see that little graph style at the end there that looks a bit like a spider web? That's Christine and her family. Christine is the light blue. Her husband is that orange? And her son is the dark blue. And so, look how different they are.
Just to say, Veronica, it explains why we have the discussions and challenges we have. So we kind of complement each other in the areas that we're lacking.
You sure do. So to explain this, you see how it's put there on the graph, 40, 20, 0. Anything under 20 is not your comfortable thinking style. So like Christine's son is not comfortable as a concrete sequential, doing concrete sequential type stuff, whereas her husband is dominant there. He's over 40. Anything over 30, you can consider as something that you're dominant in.
Okay, so let's go now to the next one, which is the strength.
Has everybody managed to take the picture of the code?
We're running out of time. So
okay, sorry.
We'll send it afterwards. Or Veronica, if you could put it in the chat, that would be great.
Okay, I'll put the link in the chat.
Christine?
So thank you. So moving from the thinking styles to strength finders, why we like this profile is that it's going to give us another angle on information that will help us guide the right kind of career decisions you make. As data professionals, it's obviously quite important to put the efforts in the areas that you excel in. And what Strength Finders departure point is really about focusing on your strengths and building on that rather than being a mediocre kind of all-rounder. So we get different parts of information. And why I think this initiative that we're embarking on is to really help you as management professionals like Socrates said, know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. So we're hoping really that by engaging and spending a little bit of time going through these assessments, not only will you be clearer on the direction you take, but also we will be able to support you in those areas better. So what we were really saying is Strength Finder is another way of helping us really understand the direction you take. And what they've got, apart from all these qualities at the bottom. So if you look at the bottom, you'll see achiever, arranger, belief, consistency. All of those, there are 35 of them that run across. These are 4 leadership domains. So executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking are leadership domains, of which most of the talents, which are in the bottom row, fall under. Now, some people will obviously sit between 2 of them or not be 100% in one area, and that's perfect. Because what Strength Finders also identifies is really who is your complementary partnership. So whatever you are, you would work best with your complementary opposites, and to know who they are, recognize them and appreciate them, especially when you're establishing teams and communities of practice. So we just were hypothesizing and kind of saying that we expecting specialists to fall in the executing domain, the thought leader to fall in the influencing domain, and managers mostly around the relationship domain, and then your CDO would be filling the qualities in your strategic thinking. So this would be the second layer of the assessment that we're wanting you to go through. And then there's the third layer, like we said, to understand the domain that suits you best. I'm not sure if there are any questions for me, because I know we're running out of time, so I'll hand over to Howard.
Yeah, so this is what we've done now in terms of taking those leadership styles, and you can see there, for example, we believe that the specialist will be leading the practice definitions. We'll see that the CDO and the thought leader will be leading in the domain. And then we will have the manager that's sort of in control of the intersections. And then the professional moving into this area, but having to sort of progress their knowledge and their experience up these different activity phases and to move along. So what we then did was to say, well, with more and more of the data we collect, we can say a thought leader, and we are suggesting that a thought leader is abstract sequential. Their dominant strength is going to be an influencer, their ability to influence the industry, and then we've got what we refer to as complementary partnerships. And those are the people that they work best with, right? So we're sort of putting this together. We're just making some suggestions, and we'd love to get feedback from you in terms of how do you think this works? Is this something that you see as valuable? And do you see it does it make sense to you in terms of how to build your team, how to build the community of practice, and then how to bring the juniors up the path by giving them first the operational tasks, then the control, then the development, and then the planning. That's how you move the people up into these areas. Any comments?
It's really cool, and I am going to do that test, and I'm not sure if I'm going to put my name there.
No, okay, that's all right. We just need the data, but then your role is important.
And Paul, this is a test. Sorry, this is a test we can all write and pass. There's no failure here.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I think this is really fantastic. So this is awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see how that plays out.
Sure, and we'll make all the data available. We'll make it available for those people having to set up community of practices within their organization, just so that you can guide the people. So it's all about that guiding, providing confidence, helping people progress on the path that they need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Howard, I think it's highly valuable. I remember just some scenarios that you are aware of as well within when we worked together previously, where we had individuals that were excellent on data support issues, but when you gave them work to help build, just died daily. And if we had this kind of scenario, this kind of assessments, we may have managed those people better and placed them in the right roles better.
Yeah. So guys, I think Veronica made the point, and I just wanted to make it finally, is that we're not saying we want to take over from these human capital experts in terms of doing those cognitive analysis, and we're not getting there, right? I think there's still a role for that. Now that's almost to check whether you can be employed or not. So it's not that. It's more about applying it to data management, and we don't see that when we go to the different companies and we say, tell me if this person will be good at data quality. We don't get the answers, right? We're not getting the insight that we need. So I didn't want to talk too much. I was really keen to get some feedback. Marvin, Danae, what are you guys? How are you guys finding this?
I'm actually finding it quite insightful. And again, I can concur with what Paul was saying, particularly if you had this in the right organization, you'll know where to place people. I think
Yes.
Vodacom's Alan Not Craig used to have a saying to have the right people in the right seat.
Yeah, that's it.
That's I think where it comes down to, because, and the thing is, I guess your viewpoint often changes, or your perception changes.
Yes.
Just as the organization moves. I mean, I'm personally might find myself as working towards a CDO, but I'm quite comfortable as a specialist.
Yeah.
Then obviously depending on the role changes, that could move to more managerial. So it basically changes the thing as your environment changes. But yeah, I think all of that fitting into your if I can put it, the bigger picture and your thinking style at the end of the day. Enhances it. So when you get to your final destination, I think you can look back and actually be proud and know exactly you've covered all the bases properly.
Yeah. Thank you, Marvin. Danae?
What? Thanks. I'm actually already doing the.
Thank you.
I'm attempting it, but I mean, I've already placed myself. I see. I think where I am, you have to be an all-rounder. All these are applicable, but I think more the specialist and the thought leader part. They talk to me. Yeah.
And I wanted to share with you, we have two people from the same company, and that we've spoken about, and the one is adamant. They don't want to get into the thought leader, the CDO. They don't want to be a manager. They just really love the work that they're doing, and they want to be the best at it. And that's great, And now that we understand that all of the work and the way in which we do the case studies and the fact that we can just get better and better at it, that is fantastic to know that they're comfortable with where they're at. And in 10 years' time, they can look back and say, how far did we progress in data modeling or data architecture? So it's helpful to have that understanding and background, as Marvin was saying. Any other comments, David, Kamano? Okay. Christine, anything from your side before we... Christine and Veronica?
No, nothing from my side, no.
So we do see that third assessment, guys, I'm sure we shared with you, that third assessment that we're talking about over here, this desired role assessment, we know that that's going to be in discussion. So whilst these thinking styles and strength finders can give us your strengths and your dominance, it's not going to tell us where your desired role is. We can't predict that, but we can, sort of start saying that, for example, a data scientist who has to be really good at the mathematical side and the the sequential following and in some cases the patterns, one can start seeing an association between that role and some of the areas that you're working in. So that's what we're trying to build up. That's what we're trying to achieve. And we'd be happy to work with any of you guys on just guiding you and sharing with you what these different assessments and roles are demanding from you and where do you want to go. That's it from me, Paul.
Thank you, Howard. Thanks, everybody. It's been awesome, and thank you for all the inputs, Howard. I encourage everybody to please fill in the forms and expect some feedback from the team. Thank you, Christine and Veronica. Awesome work, and looking forward to seeing my results and having that 30-minute chat with Howard. Have I lied to myself, or am I on track? So thanks, everybody. It's been awesome.
Nice, great work, guys. Great work. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.